Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Kristina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast. I'm your host, Kristina Schmitt. Today, I'm going to talk to you. Really, it's a question that I think many of us have asked ourselves, particularly if you're feeling very busy and overwhelmed as a business owner, as a leader. And I totally get why we ask ourselves this question, because I kind of think it too sometimes. So this question is, do I really need a strategy? So my answer is kind of straightforward, but kind of nuanced. I'm going to say yes. Yes, you do, but it's not what you think. So let me get clear on this. So most of the time, people, when they're asking this question, it's because they've had some experience with strategy where it kind of feels like a waste of time. And I'm going to say that many strategies that I was involved in through my career were kind of a waste of time. And the reason why is because you spend all this time, you lock yourself in a room for like a full day or even 2 days sometimes to come up with something that sounds pretty cool. Usually it's pretty good ideas, but nothing ever gets done with it. And there's several reasons for this. And I'll go through a couple of them, but really, honestly, the primary one is because it wasn't designed in a way that had execution in mind. So a lot of times what you'll end up with is you'll kind of go through, at least the way we would do them. We would go through a lot of, our back history. We did a lot of SWOT diagrams. And if you've never done a SWOT, it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I love this, actually. I quite liked that part of our strategy sessions because it was such a great review on what's happening right now, what's going on. And we would do it kind of in here's our operations, let's do a SWOT. Here's our sales, let's do a SWOT. Here's our quality, let's do a SWOT. And we would do it in that sense so that we could break everything down. So we kind of had the overall one and then a couple of other ones. Loved that part because it was such a great review and allowed you to kind of brainstorm and get everything out on paper. Were we capturing everything? Maybe, maybe not. All right. But it's a great way to do it. And if you start including looking at some of your metrics with it and you start kind of understanding, okay, where are we? It's not a bad place to start for a good kind of where are we now sort of moment. The problem is that you end up kind of creating this path of where you're going to be. And, we would do strategy, and whether you call it strategy or strategy is one of those words that we need to redefine, I think. But a lot of times we were doing our annual planning is really what we were doing. And it was because we were told we had to put together an annual plan and we had to, deliver it up, and it had to be this whole fancy thing with 10 objectives and all these outlandish metrics we were going to hit. And the reality is that it had no attachment to reality because we were meant to be, we had things rolling down from the quality department we had to implement, things rolling down from continuous improvement that we're implementing, new products launching and the changes with that, and then just general problems that needed to be solved. So between all of these things, we were stretched so thinly that nothing really proactive got done. We would just end up focusing on the things that came in front of us. The reality is that that's how it works, right? Is that you're going to focus on the thing that is most important right now. And you need to do that. You need to do that to keep up with things. You need to do that to resolve the problems. You need to do that to, catch the wave of whatever it is you're trying to catch. So you do need to do that. But doing it without some base form of strategy can get dangerous because you don't know if the wave you're trying to catch is the right wave for you. And that's where the strategy and the part of the strategy that I'm telling you need, that's where that comes in. So really what it comes down to is you need ultimate clarity. And strategy, as we think about it, has a lot of ambiguity to it. So my favorite, and by favorite, I mean least favorite conversation that I have with people is about what is a vision versus what is a mission. And then now people are adding purpose as well in theirs. We have vision, mission, purpose, and We need these things. I swear I've had this conversation in every single strategy type session that I've been to, is that, well, this is our vision. Oh, no. That's not your vision. That's your mission. That's a mission statement. That's not a vision. Okay. Oh, no. Hey, no, that's your purpose. Your vision is this. So, the reality is, if you can't even agree on what it's called, then no one's remembering it and no one is working towards it. So problems, right? We don't need more semantics in our lives. And that's what a lot of strategy development ends up being. So as per most everything else I try to do, let's break it down. Let's make it simple. All right. So I like to lean into, shocking, Patrick Lencioni tool, 6 critical questions. So we throw out the window the idea of mission and vision and purpose and all of that kind of stuff. So take that vocabulary out of your brain, and we put in just clarity around who we are, and what we do. So he breaks it down into 6 kind of simple questions, but they're not always easy to answer. And the key is that if you can get extremely clear on these 6 questions, then decisions become easier. Decisions for your team to make without you become easier. Decisions about some drastic change becomes simpler because you have given yourself guidelines. I know there's a lot of us in this world that don't like guidelines, or we think we don't like guidelines, but they're very helpful. They're very, very helpful. We don't like guidelines. We don't like processes. A lot of people have fear around that kind of word. Really, we all like them. We all need them, and we do thrive with them. Think about roads. Roads have very clear boundaries to them, unless the paint lines are worn off or they're dirt roads, right? They're less clear boundaries. And that can be hard to drive on, right? Okay. If you don't have a very clear area where your car belongs, then, you could weave into where another car belongs. Or think about 2-lane systems. If it's wide enough for 2 cars to go and you don't have 2 separate lanes, you get a little bit of havoc going on. Traffic lights, stop signs, all of those things are boundaries to live within, and it makes it better. Even if you look at parenting, there's actually studies that show that kids feel safer when they have clear boundaries, and clear boundaries around a bedtime, around a wake up time, around some rules, because it just feels safer. When it's I'm wandering around aimlessly hoping someone's going to stop me before I fall off a cliff or something, that's frightening. And the reality is with this, or with people, is that children are still human beings. So when we grow up, we still like to have boundaries, guidelines, structure. It makes us happier. It makes us more confident, and it makes us more certain that we are operating where we should be. And it keeps people aligned. So benefit to the employees to having that is that they get this structure. They get this kind of guideline for how to behave and guideline for decision making, that they're not always bugging the boss or uncertain if they're going to get yelled at or not, because they have some level of structure there. And huge benefit to the leader and the business owner, because the people are going to be doing what you wanted them to do in the way that you wanted them to do it. And they're going to make the decision without having to call or text you in the middle of the night or bug you when you're on vacation or whatever it might be. So these are huge reasons and huge benefits to having structures around, and the strategic decisions that you make. These 6 critical questions, these are a huge helper to the structure. So it's hard to base structures and processes without kind of a baseline of these things. And the biggest piece that, as I was saying, is clarity. And it's clarity around things that are the changeable things and things that are the unchangeable things. And I'm going to clarify that a little bit better. But when we would typically do strategy sessions, or when I feel like strategy sessions were done, it's everybody always wanted to restart the whole thing and restart and redo. What's your vision? What's your mission? What are your values? What's your purpose? What's your, this kind of stuff that's for people that like a lot of practical things, it feels very annoying, because it's why are we talking about this pie in the sky stuff? It doesn't matter. But what we want to establish is these unchangeable things. And that's where, semantics aside, clarity on those makes sense. Old school strategy, I think, brings a lot of unclarity, we'll say, because people try to make it pretty with nice buzzwords, and the values are everything that we treat people with respect. We, all the things that, people just do. If you're an upstanding business, you're going to do. Right. So having actual values that mean something to people and clarity around what that means, that's what I'm talking about. What I'm going to share with you is, I'm going to call it 4 things, 4 steps, but essentially it's all clarity, but 4 ways of having clarity. So the first one is, when we use these 6 critical questions, what we need to be doing, or what we are doing, is we're clarifying the unchangeables. If you've done some time management training with me, you may have heard me call things that don't move in your calendar monuments. So think of it as like monuments for your business, right? What are the monuments that we hold and we do not move and they stay the same? So the questions in the 6 critical questions that those are why do we exist, right? So essentially what you're trying to get at there is, how are we making the world better? It's kind of the purpose statement, kind of the vision statement, but it's meant to be this kind of big grandiose thing. But what it does is it gets everybody on the same page about why it exists in the first place. So like my business, it exists because I want to see people enjoy their work and really ultimately enjoy their lives. Like that is why this business exists, because I am so tired of seeing leaders, business owners, workers hate work. I've lived it and I've hated it myself. And now that I've found what I love, I want to have everybody love what they do. And the best way I can do that is by helping leaders and business owners get clarity, get help with their leadership, and get their businesses running well and getting their teams enjoying what they do, it creating a great culture. So that's why my business exists. I've written it in a nice little pretty word, like not pretty word, but really simple. Like it's like, or share the light of God with people in their works. It is written like that, but like that's why I do what I do. How that gets utilized is that when I'm looking at making a decision with something and I'm saying, gosh, maybe I should put some element of that into my business, or maybe I should put some element of that. If it doesn't support making people's lives better at work or helping them to see God in their lives, work and home, it doesn't fit. And if it actually detracts from that, then it doesn't fit. So it's an easy way to kind of keep people on the same page and maybe get people excited about what we're all about. Because you can be an auto part builder and still be all about bringing the light of Christ into people's world, or loving life and home. Like you can still have that as your ultimate purpose. And if people can get excited and rally around that, that feels a little bit bigger than building car parts to some people, because not everybody likes car parts. All right. So that is like, it's a really helper clarity point. First one, sometimes it takes a little longer when you're doing it, because it can feel hard to get past that, like, well, we're here to supply cars, like supply car parts, or I'm here to give people some skills, like it can feel hard to get past that. But a lot of times what you do is you want to go back to like, why did the original people start it? So easy for me because I am that, right? So that becomes easy. The second thing that we want to do is, well, let me finish talking about the unchangeables. I got talking about one in way too much detail. So the other unchangeable parts are the how do we behave. So this can be called your values, but what we want to do is steer away from just the values like that people kind of like to talk about, like generic values, but get to what is really the core values of the business. And the differentiating factor on there is that these are things that you almost define the people that work in the business, and that you could not think of doing the opposite of it. So that's how we want to really define this core value. Patrick Lencioni breaks it down into 3 different kinds of values because they're very easy to get confused, and it's helpful to have this structure around it. So the first one being those core values. I'm going to come back to clarify that after the other 2. The next one, and these ones trip a lot of people up, but the aspirational values. So we want to be this way, but we're not today. So if that's the case, you cannot call it a core value. It doesn't, because you're not doing it, and it's not a core part of you or your business. So you can't call it that. All right. So there's aspirationals. There's like pay to play. I mean, there's another word, but basically like yeah, you treat people nicely and with respect. Like that's kind of a pay to play. If you're doing it above and beyond, like you're bringing them like cups of hot chocolate and, sitting them down and letting them like relax on a cozy super couch and, sending handwritten thank you notes after every single meeting and, like doing this above and beyond, then maybe you can use it. But being honest, respectful, like those are kind of just things you should do, right? So like they're not defining characteristics. And that's where these core values are defining characteristics. And the fourth one is kind of accidental values. Those ones typically people don't accidentally name as a value in their core value system, but they can you can accidentally get there. Like a lot of times I'll see in startups, you've got your creatives that kind of start it up and they want to hire more people like them. But that's usually not what they need. Like they are the creative and they're great there. And they're not going to like someone else, kind of playing in their sandbox that much. So what they need is somebody to help them structure. And so they end up getting a lot of creatives and a lot of people doing a lot of creative things and a lot of not structure going on. They can accidentally get a value for having super creativity being like the main big thing that they have to have and structure not being part of it. And they need to kind of have both. So that's kind of the accidental values. And then the third one is what do we do? I mean, that's pretty simple. Like these are the things like, I offer coaching, training, speaking, like those kind of things. Like that is what I do. Do I, give people haircuts? Absolutely not. So, but being very clear about what you do and what you don't do. And then these strategic anchors, I am not going to try to get too far into that one because it gets a lot, but these strategic anchors are the things that kind of functionally make your business your business. So that is like, these are the important parts. Like for me, being local to where I am, and if you've been following it, I just moved, being local is kind of a core value of mine. It's a strategic anchor for me because I like to contribute to my local community. So what that means is because I uprooted myself from the community I was in and I put myself in a new one, I have to now reestablish that. So I like to be local. I like to serve Catholics sometimes, and so I keep involved in those things. So those are kind of like some strategic anchors for me, and quick and practical. It's got to be practical. It's got to be useful. Like if it's not useful, if it's too pie in the sky, it's not for me. It's not for my business. It's not for my clients because we need to use it. Right. So those are kind of some examples of like strategic anchors for me. And it's helpful because like there's a lot of things that come at me all the time that's like, is that something I want to do? Is that something that fits my model? Is that something that's useful to my clients? Should I get trained in that? Should I get, and I am, even with my strategic anchors, there's still ones that I'm considering. But I do think that they're in eventual, I should work on certain ones, but then there's other ones that say, that's not me. That's not what I'm going to do. So it does create filters and it's very helpful to have that. So just as a reference point, like going back to like strategy can feel slow and like this heavy sort of thing. And society is kind of changing now. It feels like it's changing and it's changing very fast. Like if you just look at technology development over the last 100 years, like it was kind of slow, kind of sped up fast. And now it's like super fast, right? It's like 6 weeks, So everything is super fast. So it feels hard to say I need a strategy that's like 10 years out. But at the same time, we need these unchangeable parts understood and very clear and clearly communicated to our teams so that we can change fast with the time. So we don't get caught up on the wrong wave and we don't get lost in the tizzy of all this new stuff coming at us. So understanding where these 4 things are a big, important part in order to move fast. So once you've identified these things, it's getting extremely clear with them, making them simple to remember so you don't forget them, so you can use them, and very clear to your team and very clear to everybody in the company. So that clarity first has to start with that leadership team. So first the leader and the leadership team, and then you need to roll it out and make it very extremely clear to everybody else that works with you. It could be clients, could be customers, could be suppliers, could be like your whole staff. It should be your whole staff at least. Stakeholders. The clearer you can be about how these values work, the more people can execute them, the more people can help make those decisions and help stay on the right path to the direction you're headed. Okay, so having and understanding those unchangeables as a base is huge. So you do that once, you kind of check in on and make sure nothing is crazy changed. Really, most of them shouldn't. The strategic anchors, maybe if you're new, you might be shifting those a little bit as you're starting to have more discovery. But like ultimately, once you're established, those should have some clarity and some staying power. The next part is these very changeable parts. And when I say very, I mean like less than a year vary. Okay. So like the next one is the what's most important right now. What that means is that, looking back, using my example of my manufacturing days when we had like 10 big things that had to get done, what ended up happening is like you do a little here, a little there, a little here, a little there, and like not any of them would get done unless it like had to and you had a deadline to like a customer or something. So ultimately what would happen? All the energy would go into the one that had to get done, because it was the most important thing to do right now. And everything else was able to be put back on the sideline because it was not the most important. And what makes it the most important is the question that is up to you and your team. But, it could be deadline driven. It could be, there's a program is coming. We have to launch. We have to meet these deadlines. Boom. It could be that you have a burning platform that needs solving. Like we are losing money hand over fist. We have to close that gap. We have to get over it. That is the most important thing. Okay. It could be that you've got someone just in the wrong role. They're awesome. You love them. And it's just not working, but you want to keep them. You need their, problem solving abilities and you want to keep them. So your focus is figuring out how to get that person into the right role and, that kind of thing. Like that could be it. Like it could be anything. And it could be anything that's like 3 months time frame, 6 months time frame, 9 months time frame. I was actually just today listening to a podcast at the table. So a Patrick Lencioni podcast, right? So he was talking about how the world is a changing and everything is faster. And so this need to create these kind of plans that are these 5-year plans, like it's not as important because the landscape changes so much. This is what we're talking about there is this part, what's the most important right now. Like you don't have to identify, the next most important and the next most important and the next most important, because that's what typical strategic planning would do. What we want to identify, okay, what's most important? Okay, here. We already have established like why we exist. We've established our value system. We've established our strategic anchors. Like we know those things and what we do. Okay, we can now just focus on the most important thing all the time. And that it just is simpler. You get everybody driving towards the one goal and all the horsepower goes there instead of pulling from everywhere else, and you make progress. Like it's the whole adage of you can't really multitask. Like a lot of us like to think we can multitask. Like I love to believe that I can multitask, but I can't. Like we don't do it. It is just slower overall. It's like you think, oh, I'm doing a little this, a little this, a little this, a little this, and I'm like moving everything forward sort of. But the reality is it would be less draining and quicker overall to say, we're going to get this one done. Yeah, all that's bleeding. All of that is like needs doing, but this is the one I'm going to move. And then when that gets to a point that is very clearly stated, I'm going to then move the next one. And then I'm going to move this one. And then I'm going to, and so you do it in batch chunks of moving things to a very specified level. And then you move to the next one versus kind of like pushing everything all at the same time and really not getting anything done. So that was the third one. Get very clear on what's most important right now. And then the last thing, the fourth one, is keeping that top of mind. So I don't know how many strategic plans that people have seen filled with dust. It's in a pretty little binder. It's got, a flashy little PowerPoint around it. I've seen some with like cool, narrated, animated, all these awesome videos around them. And then they fall. They're pretty little videos and pretty little wall mountings, and that's where they sit. So the most important part is getting that translated into weekly and even daily tasks. So we take what's most important right now. We have some objectives that need to get done, and then we take that objective and we break it down into what we're doing this month, next month, and then we break that down to this week, and then we break that down even more per person, and we say, okay, I'm going to do this in the morning, I'm going to do this in the afternoon. Like the smallest buckets that you can break it down into, the more you're going to actually move the needle. Because it's not about these big changes. It's about the little things that you're doing every single day that move your business forward. And that's how your strategic plan doesn't just sit on the shelf and collect dust without any action being done. If you found this helpful today, please share it with a friend, because I want to spread the word on this strategy thing, because man, strategy gets overused, misused, and I'm tired of the semantics around it. So just please share it with a friend, and that would make me very happy. If you're struggling with this in your own business and you're saying, I've done this big strategy session and mine is sitting on the shelf, or I've got too many priorities and I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know where I should be, grab one of my free calls. These are leader strategic calls, and we can talk about it. We can see where you are and get you steps to get you back on track. And it will just help. You will not believe how helpful it is to just say things out loud to somebody else who's not in the business. Say it out loud. We'll put together a plan and you're on your way. Grab one of those. The link will be in the show notes. It's right on my website too. You can go find it right there as well. And that's KristinaSchmitt.ca, by the way. All right. Again, if you liked the episode today and you found it enjoyable, please like it, share with a friend, leave a comment on the YouTube, and subscribe and leave a review. And I will see you on the next episode of the Business Building Blocks podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit KristinaSchmitt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.